Welcome to Living in the Miracle Zone. This is the place to be if you want to live in the flow of synchronicities and miracles in your everyday life. I'm your host, Marci Shimoff. I'm a #1 New York Times bestselling author, a teacher in The Secret, and the creator of the worldwide program, Your Year of Miracles. And I have spent my life studying happiness and miracles. And in this podcast, we bring to you extraordinary miracle stories that are so inspiring and groundbreaking miracle tools that will show you how you can live your most miraculous life. It is my heartfelt intention that we have a fabulous time together. So welcome to the Miracle Zone. And today I'm joined by Dr. Richard Shuster. Hi, Dr. Richard.
Marci, we're in the Miracle Zone.
We are in the Miracle Zone.
It's awesome to be here.
Awesome to be with you. And let me just share with people a little bit about you and your background. You are a clinical psychologist. You are a philanthropist. You are a very sought after TEDx speaker. And you're really a cutting edge CEO who knows how to help people and organizations really live their full potential. And I have had the honor of being on your wonderful podcast, The Daily Helping with Dr. Richard Shuster. And I know that you have listeners in over 150 countries. I also know that you've been in big time media places, the Huffington Post, NPR, NBC News, Men's Health, even Cosmopolitan. And today I'm looking forward to talking with you about, I know you've had a number of near-death experiences and how your life. And so just again, thank you for being here. I had a blast being on your podcast, and I expect we're going to have a blast being here on mine. Yes?
It can't be any other way. It was so much fun having you on the Daily Helping, and I'm just excited to be here, and hopefully your audience gets excited and learns some things that could help them be in the miracle zone.
I am sure they will. And so, as you know, this is all about living a miraculous life. And you have literally almost died 3 times, but I've heard you tell people that it makes you the luckiest person on earth. And I want to know how it is that you're the luckiest person on earth, how it is you've come to live in the miracle zone, even despite having almost died 3 times.
You know, I'm going to abbreviate the stories, and they're out there. But the very short version of this is about 20 years ago, I broke my spine in a car accident and was nearly killed. And I have a longstanding history of telling doctors that I don't like what they're telling me and doing the opposite. So when the doctors were telling me all the things I would never do again, and this is me, at 20 something, I said, no, I'll do all those things again. And after the car accident, that actually was the thing that put me on the path that I'm on today. So I'm very grateful for that. Similarly, some years later, I suffered a stroke, which nearly killed me. In fact, I missed a major center in my brain by literally less than a millimeter, Marci. I can't even show you with my fingers how small it was, the difference between me probably talking to you and me not. And then about a year after that, I had a routine surgery that they said had a 1 in a million shot of going wrong. And I was the 1 in a million. And the doctors were telling me, you're probably not getting out of here intact if you get out of here at all. And I told them I am getting out of here intact. And I did. I walked out of the hospital 2 weeks later, nothing wrong with me. Doctors had no idea how or why. Even the stroke, when I had the stroke, pretty impaired. I wasn't able to speak properly. They put me on the swallow restrictions, afraid that if I ate any food, I would die. Because of the choke. And I couldn't use my hands to text. I knew what letters I'd want to hit, but my thumbs just wouldn't work. And they said to me, you've got a long road for recovery. And I said, no, I'm going to beat this in weeks. And they said, well, we're sending psych to see you. You're in shock. I said, no, I'm psych. You don't need to send them. and I did. Just weeks I spent kind of meditating, seeing my brain rewiring like those old school telephone switchboards, right? Like in The Marvelous Miss Maisel, where she was working, that sort of thing. And so I feel very strongly that when adversity happens to us, we have two choices, right? We can ball our fist up at the sky and get mad at whatever deity we believe in and say, this is your fault, my life is ruined. Or we can say, what are the lessons, right? What meaning can I take for this? How does this improve my life? And so to get back to your question, like why do I feel so lucky when most people would say, God, you've had really bad luck. Most people, they don't have these near-death experiences at all. I've already had 3, right? And so each one of those has really reshaped my life. The first one, the car accident, I was working in a profession that made me miserable. It was miserable every day. And that car accident was the catalyst that helped me walk away from that and discover that I really feel good inside when I help people. That was number one. When the stroke happened, I was working 80 to 100 hours a week under this auspice of, hey, I'm doing this for my family. I'm trying to make the world a better place, right? We can get really caught up, particularly entrepreneurs. And I know not everybody listening to this owns a business, but it's very easy to get wrapped up in something and romanticize it as, oh, I'm doing this for some good reason. But that almost killed me. And so because of that, it completely reshaped how I approach my life, how many hours I spend working, how much time do I intentionally spend with my wife, with my children, in doing the things that bring me joy, which is miraculous, right? And so each of these things that have caused me in that moment a suffering or illness have turned into something special on the back end. And for me, I feel it a responsibility because I have I'm blessed with such a large platform. How can I share those things so that these tribulations, if you will, that I went through don't happen to other people?
I love this. A few things that I just so resonate with about what you said is Einstein said that the most important question we can ask ourselves is this a loving universe? And what I found is that people who are happiest, who are living in the miracle zone, they say, yes, that doesn't mean everything goes the way they want it to go. You don't want to get in a car accident. You don't want to have a stroke. But it means that they believe that it's a loving universe and that life is for them rather than against them. And so, you're asking of what's the lesson in this. I like to ask if there was a higher purpose, what might that purpose be? And you seem to, I think it's miraculous. You didn't die. You had that stroke that came just a tiny, tiny bit away from your brain. Well, you're here for a reason. And I know I hear you get that. And that's part of living in the miracle zone is just getting that, hey, all of us, if we're listening to this, we're alive and we're alive for a reason. And so, and you adjusted your life. Great for that. Now, how do you suggest? I mean, it's a crazy world. There's a lot of yucky stuff that's going on and it's hard to go, well, life is for me, not against me. This is a benevolent universe. When you see all this stuff, how do you stay positive in the midst of all of that?
So there's two things that I will share. One is, and this is straight out of my clinical psychology background, we refer to somebody who has that belief system that they're control of their life, good things are happening, as an internal locus of control. If somebody believes the opposite, that woe is me, the universe is against me, that's an external locus of control. So it's important to set the stage for what I'm going to talk about next by understanding that there are decades worth of research that has been replicated in different societies, cultures, those that have a high degree of self-efficacy, meaning that they believe that their life is generally in their control and they can make their life better if they choose to. Those people have a far greater chance of being happy, significantly reduced mental health issues, right? Like, it's so obvious and it makes so much sense. But what you talked about, what's out there, what's icky, okay? So now take that, put that somewhere in your back pocket for a moment and think about the world we live in terms of media exposure. It didn't used to be this way 20 years ago when we didn't have devices in our pocket that had a customized 24-hour-a-day information cycle. I didn't say news cycle, I said information cycle. And that's an important distinction. Before the advent of cell phones and social media platforms, where did your information come from? It came from probably your 5 o'clock local news and your 6 o'clock national news, and maybe the newspaper, which came out, you go get it at 5 in the morning if you were up that early and read it. But so that was basically it. The news has always existed. If you think about the way newscasts are structured, they put all the sensational stuff at the beginning, and then they put sports at the very end. And this is not tinfoil hat stuff, right? This is just marketing in basic business sense. They're going to put things on the news that invoke a significant emotional response in people. Why? Because you're going to be engaged. And if you're engaged, what happens? You watch the commercials, right? In between the segments. That's what the news is really about, right? It's about ad placement. Now, where we are in a society in 2023, frankly, scares the hell out of me, Marci, for the following reasons, is that because we have now shifted that news cycle into our social media cycle, we are now as a society, and there's pretty strong evidence to suggest this. It used to be back in the day that if somebody had significant psychopathology, and let's say narcissism, right? The narcissist really only shows up to go see a doctor for help or a therapist for help if they've suffered something rather significant that happens to them. Their spouse leaves them a letter that says, "I can't deal with you, I'm out," or your boss fires you, or something like that. But because of social media, what we're able to do now, click unfriend, click unfollow. And so we're living in an echo chamber where people that have dissenting viewpoints from us, we can get rid of those voices. So that does a couple of things. It's reinforcing our beliefs, whether our beliefs are accurate or not. That's bad. And then two, the negative stuff is just amplified by everybody in our network. So I'm going to say some stuff that's pretty, for most people, hits a nerve. Okay. And you could do a really simple test. I believe, and I don't have data to suggest this, but I believe that pretty much everybody in our Western society is addicted to their cell phone. Mm-hmm. And I want you, so everybody who's listening to this tonight at dinner, I want you to do an experiment. I want you to put your cell phone in your pocket during mealtime. If you can get through the meal without thinking about it, without wondering about your notifications, who's messaging you, and don't cheat with your Apple Watch, right? Turn that off too. Then you're cool. If you find yourself getting that itch, like you want to pull that phone out and you want to check, or the second the meal's over, you're like, oh, right? Like you just can't take it. You have a problem. And that doesn't mean you need to go to cell phone rehab, right? I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that these systems that we have in our life from a technology standpoint have really conditioned us to elicit a dopamine response, which is the pleasure hormone. And so getting a like on Facebook is the same thing as taking a drag off a cigarette from a neurochemical standpoint. That's terrifying, right? So if you are the person who found yourself a little bit edgy during that meal because you wanted to grab that phone, it's time to start intentionally dialing back how often you're on this thing. Now, I know that we work and we communicate and we get emails, whatnot. That's fine. I get that. But by removing some of the social media, by staying off major news sites, you are not feeding your brain some of this horrible information. I saw, and I can't remember, I think it was Peter Diamandis did this talk, and in his room were pillars of success. You know, I think Tony Robbins was there. Pretty sure Elon Musk was in the room. All these people who have achieved a remarkable level of success. Ariana Huffington was in the room. And he said, show of hands, how many people in this room watch the news? Nobody put their hands in. It's not because they're rich and successful. It's because they understand that the best way to be successful in your life is to remove all elements to the degree you can of negativity, right? And so I don't allow the news in my home at all. If you live in Miami, Florida, and somebody tells you that Hurricane Cynthia or whatever the hurricane's name is coming your way, get on your news app, see if you're in the cone, and make an educated decision about what you're going to do. That doesn't mean that you need to watch Jim Cantori for the next 15 hours, making yourself insane, right? So it's about being really intentional about keeping those negative sources out of your life. And that includes people. That includes people too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that people, I think that's brilliant. And I think the thing people don't really get is that we take in everything the way we take in food. So you know that bad food affects you in a bad way, but it's the same when you've got bad information, bad news, bad, toxic people around you. You're digesting it, ingesting it, and having to digest it in the same way you would any kind of food. And the other thing is, and I know you certainly know this, is that not only do we get addicted, the dopamine response, but it's also we are addicted to the negative. It's more the cortisol, everything. It's like, oh, this is why you just, the headlines, the negative headlines, the sensationalist stuff about this kidnapping or this thing over there. It's like it's feeding that those neural pathways. And so what you're talking about is really redirecting, recreating new neural pathways for the positive, for what allows us to live more in the miracle zone. And so I'm 100% with you on all of that. And I'd love to hear from you what you think are the maybe top 2 ways that we can actually, besides letting go of that, what's feeding us the bad stuff, how do we start really retraining our brains? I know you speak a little bit about altruism, but what are your top 2?
So one of the things that most people don't realize is that our brains are wired in such a way that we are predisposed to have the same neurochemical reaction if we help people versus if somebody is doing something good for us, right? And so if I were to take any 2 people in your audience and hook up real-time diagnostic imaging of their brains, and person A gave somebody $100 bill and person B received $100, the brains light up exactly the same way. And so we're so focused on me, right? We've become very selfish in our society. One last little social media piece of knowledge: the more there's evidence that suggests the more that somebody posts on social media, that's inversely correlated with happiness. So the more they're online, the less happy they are. And so by building habits is how you create new neural pathways. So one of the things, it's my call to action on my show every episode, is for people to go out and do kind things for other people. And if you commit an act of kindness every day, that is training your brain to become very healthy. The other thing that I really, really strongly believe in is having a daily gratitude practice. Yes, you said this in the beginning. Sometimes things happen to us and they're out of our control, but everybody who wakes up on a given day can say, you know what? I'm alive today. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my stomach. I have people who care about me. And start there and build that list down and be mindful every day of how lucky you are to be alive and have all these things in your life, because it's very easy to get caught up in the negatives, right? But if we're intentional, and I actually have my desktop wallpaper on my computer, I list things that I'm grateful for, and sometimes I change that up, but everywhere I look, I'm reminded of all the things in my life that are really amazing. So those are just a couple quick tips that I would give.
So here's what I invite everyone to do. And I agree 100%. I've always said that gratitude is the fast track to happiness. And it's one of the happiness habits that I have in Happy for No Reason, as is kindness and generosity is another happiness habit. And great research out there about that. So what I invite everyone to do is right now, just think of something that you're grateful for. And I can say, I'm grateful to get to be here with you, Dr. Richard, and I'm grateful to get to be here with everyone who's listening. And right now in this moment, I'm also very, very grateful for a healthy body. I feel I just turned 65 about 6 months ago, and I can't believe it because I don't feel any different than I felt when I was 30. Well, maybe my knees a little bit. But so everyone right now, just think of something that you say, yeah, I am so grateful for this right now. And then my other invitation is to everyone today, do an act of kindness. Find something where you go out and do an act of kindness, and let us know. Put in comments, put in notes what you've done. So I would love to know, you've spoken to, I know you've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes of the Daily Helping podcast. You've spoken to amazing people. I would love to know, what do you think is the most valuable advice that you've ever gotten, or the most valuable story that you've ever heard, or anything that has really keeps you going?
I think the best advice that I was ever given was that the work always gets done. And what I mean by that is, and I think about this a lot, particularly after I had that stroke, because there's so much to do in a day, right? Like we always, oh my God, I have this email and this presentation, this proposal, and pick up the kids and dinner and all, right? But it's okay to close the laptop. It's okay to have a life. It's okay to let the work go to tomorrow, because there'll always be more work. And that has helped really balance me. So I would say that.
I love that. Love that. Yeah. That balance is so important. I mean, as we know, people don't lie on their deathbed and go, gosh, I only wish I'd worked a little bit harder.
Right.
That is not what happens. So we talk about living in the miracle zone. And what I mean by that is living in that place where you're in the flow, where you're in synchronicity, where life is just, you wake up and things happen that you go, wow, that's amazing. I didn't expect that email today, or to get to run into this person today, and how beautiful that is. What is your experience of living in that flow or synchronicity of life? Or what would you suggest for people to do to put themselves more in that miracle zone?
You need to be doing what you truly intrinsically love. Because I find that when you are following your heart's passion, the universe brings people and experiences into you, sometimes exactly when you're meant to have them. So conversely, that means it's just as critical to remove those dissenting voices. If somebody thinks your ideas are stupid or will never work, you need to silence those voices and remove them from your sphere of influence. And because what will happen is, once you do, your space is going to get filled with people that are going to support you on your journey to live a life of miracles.
And so what is it I know you're doing what's totally aligned for you? What's your experience of that, of having shifted? And I know you spoke about that a little bit earlier, but I'd love to hear what happened when you really said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do what I love. And how did the people around you shift? How did life shift?
It was this podcast that I was at the time a practicing clinical psychologist, doing very well, but just felt like I was meant, like I just felt this calling, Marci, to do something more impactful to help a larger number of people. And when I recorded the first podcast, it was with a gentleman, a best-selling author named Paul J. Zak. And I'll never forget it, because I recorded this episode. When I recorded my intro to the episode, it was one take, and it was like perfect. I didn't have to do it 100 times. And I talked to him, and I literally, after he said goodbye and I pushed stop on the recording, I threw off my headphones and pumped my fist and I screamed, because I was so happy. Like I had felt a level of elation that it was hard to describe. And as I started going down this path, more and more people like yourself started gravitating towards me. I found an opportunity, because of this podcast and the platform I have, to start creating businesses that could help change people's lives through different technology vehicles that I've created over the years. None of that would have existed before. So everything that I have built and done post-podcast is 100% on mission for me, right? My mission is to help people be the best version of themselves, even if it's of no direct benefit to me. And so I live that, right? If I had any tattoos, that's what my tattoo would be, right? But because I'm so intentional about that space and because I'm so careful, I have a system about how I vet people and let them into my life. The only people in my world are uplifting, amazing people who, if they're not directly working with me, they're certainly cheering me on and excited for the stuff I'm doing.
Congratulations. You did it. You consciously, intentionally put your life in the miracle zone by saying, I'm going to do what I love, what I'm here on this planet to do. So what do you do about the fear that comes up? And, people right now are going, yeah, sure, I'd love to be living aligned with what my soul is here for, or with what I'm here for. But how am I going to pay the bills? And I'm too afraid, and, all of that. What do you do with all that, with the fear?
So I would say a couple of things. Number one, I don't subscribe to, and some people do, I don't subscribe to quit your job, burn the ships.
Right.
I think that's idiotic, particularly in the volatile economy that we're all faced with today, right? So you might really love your job and you might really be good at your job, but what you really love are animals. So don't quit your job. Start volunteering at the Humane Society. It's finding that thing that you feel aligned with, right? And an exercise I often take people on stage through is I'll have them close their eyes. And if you could do anything in the world right now, what would it be? Don't think about money. Don't think about, all the stuff you said. How do I pay my bills? What will people think? Just don't qualify anything. Just what makes you joyful and happy. And you start there. And once you have an idea of that thing or things that you're really passionate about, then the next question, if you love what you're doing and can see yourself doing that for the rest of your day professionally, cool. Find a way to start integrating that into your life. And that's a lot less scary, Marci. You talk about the fear and anxiety. So that really doesn't come into play if you're just dipping your toe while still working at your other job. If you find, here's the real magic. If you can find something that you're passionate about, that you feel that you were uniquely born to do, and it helps people, and you can find a way to make money doing it, that's the real deal. And so if you become intentional, and maybe it's just a side hustle, maybe how you bring that to the world changes over time, but maybe it's just something you do immediately just with friends and family, but just to feel good. I promise you, the more you engage in that activity, the less scarier it becomes. And the more people will be brought into your world that can either accelerate what you're doing or find a way to help you do it in the way that you want to.
Mm. Brilliant, wise words. I agree with you completely on all of that. And I appreciate that you're a living example of this. And I just want people to know, if they want to know more about you, Dr. Richard, that you can go to drrichardschuster.com. And we'll, of course, have that available for everybody. And before we close, I am going to close with a quote that I think really ties in everything that we've just said here. But I'd love to know, do you have any final comments for us about living in the miracle zone?
Be intentional about who is in your world, period. If you have the right people around you, anything is possible.
Well, I'm glad you're in my world. I was intentional around that.
Likewise, Marci.
So I just want to tie this up with a quote by the amazing Dr. Richard Shuster, who said, this is something you said, there is incredible potential that lies within each and every one of us to create positive change in our lives and the lives of others while achieving our dreams. So I believe that. I know, Dr. Richard, you have seen that, and we encourage everyone to really step into that and live more and more in the miracle zone. So thank you, Dr. Richard. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. This was awesome.
Yeah. And I want to thank everyone for listening today. I hope that you're feeling inspired and uplifted and more in the miracle zone after our time together. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, we so appreciate your 5-star ratings and your reviews, and share the Miracle Zone love with your friends and family. And if you want to live more in the Miracle Zone, you can take our free 2-minute quiz to find out just what your miracle superpower is. You just go to quiz.youryearofmiracles.com. And remember that your life of miracles is waiting for you. It is your birthright. And so may you take a step forward each day into the miracle zone. Enjoy.